falls inside the GM Studios halls. Tabletop games where nightmares creep, in a realm where sanity is lost and weak. Welcome to the abyss where dreams shatter. Inside the GM studio, nothing else matters. Blood and chaos, the dark arts unfold. In the realm of role-playing, where legends are told.
Hey there, all of you idiots out there on the internet, including our loyal listeners. Welcome to the side quest episode of Inside the GM Studio, where we field questions from the internet, probably from Reddit, on the roll of a die. I am your host, David.
I am Matt.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're doing it. I get a 17 this week, Matt, on the D20 roll, the clickety-clack from the old school. What do we got?
All right. This one comes from Maddest of Mad on RRPG.
That's you. You posted this.
With the title, maybe, What Makes a Horror RPG Truly Horrific? What makes a game session really, really scary? And by what means? What methods do you or your GMs use? Is the horror introduced mainly through the narrative, or are there any particular rule sets that put shivers down your spines? What is this? INB4? INB4? I don't know what that means, but INB4? Okay. I see what they're saying for the comments down below. Let's not throw in any blatantly obvious stuff. The setting is a second-class feature, and the horrors do not need to be supernatural. Building up tensions and resource scarcity are key. There's a sanity panic mechanic that's used to inform everyone by stats alone how afraid they should be, yada yada, that sort of thing. So the mechanics don't have to be a part of it. It can be.
Panic mechanic.
Yeah, panic mechanic. Or like that, like sanity, or even a fear, fear checks. I think what they want is to stay away from those and use what else could you use to make a horror game truly horrific.
Most things, whether it's a game or not, that are horrific because of a tension between two worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And typically that tension is a world of safety and a world of danger. But it doesn't need to be. It could be more of an existential threat. But the key element to most horror games, from what I understand, is dread.
Mm-hmm.
You want the players to always be feeling like something really bad is about to happen. And the more subtly and subtextually you can communicate that, probably the better. Now, there's a whole different... There's a variety of different swaths of horror genres. And you probably should try to figure out which horror genre your game fits into, right? Body horror is not the same thing as existential horror.
Mm-hmm.
And those aren't the same thing as maybe more straightforward adrenaline kind of torture porn kind of horror, right? Where there's some demonstrable threat. So it really depends on what you mean when you say scary. And so that is going to vary from group to group. I would suggest taking a look at a few well-worn genres and figuring out which of those genres your game plays into. And that will depend on how long it is. You know, you can have a game that maybe starts off as kind of like a slasher mystery and then moves into something more body horror and then moves into something that's more existential horror and then moves into... But if it's a one-shot, you want to keep it pretty tightly focused. But generally speaking, you want to have concepts that are kind of embedded in their certain genre beats, right? Like if you're playing Call of Cthulhu, that's a well-established cosmic horror genre.
Hmm.
And there are certain things that are kind of part and parcel for that. But mostly it's going to hang on your ability to hint at but not deliver on some horrible thing where it's just kind of like slowly trickling and building up. That tension keeps your players engaged, even if the payoff isn't all that great. So, I'm trying to think of some concrete tactics that you can use. There, he already kind of alluded to having mechanics embedded in the game, but
Hmm.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on trying to? I mean, foreshadowing is a pretty big one.
Yep.
But go
Atmosphere
ahead.
and mood, especially if you're playing together at a table.
Hmm.
Um, you can ask your players if you're playing on a VTT to, hey, make the room dark, or try to set the atmosphere the best that you can. Um, other than other than actual storytelling and narration, the only thing I can think of is mechanics. Because there's a lot of suspenseful mechanics that you can use, be them clocks from uh, uh, Blades in the Dark, or even the Jenga Tower from Dread.
From
Or Fear from Daggerheart. Uh, it's all these things that is out there visually for the players to see, and it makes them realize, holy shit, our fear count is really high, or our clock is ticking down. What's going to happen when it finally hits zero, or even the Jenga tower is getting a bit sparse and it's looking a bit wobbly. My next pull could be my very last. Uh,
hmm
so that's the only thing I can think of, other than good atmosphere, uh, music, as well as, other than, there's one killer that will always kill a horror RPG, and that is the players that aren't in it, that aren't locked in for a horror RPG. Because as soon as that one guy comes out and he starts to make it, Looney Tunes, fucking, after back when you and I, we'd have our Hammer horror nights and we would just
yeah,
make fun of the fucking movies because they were a laugh a minute. It doesn't become, it's not a horror game anymore.
yeah. Don't let someone cut the tension with humor or whatever. That you're right. That takes the wind out of the sails. But I guess I would say that the you need to be like to adeptly do horror. You need to remember that horror is slow.
Mm-hmm.
It's slow and it builds and it builds and it builds and actually sometimes having something that doesn't deliver um once you've built it is actually foreshadowing that something is down the road, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's if you set the stage properly, describing certain elements of the environment and whatever, and not make everything so action oriented, then it builds mood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think one of the better things in that illustrates this example is in the Death House. If you build mood in the Death House, I'm sorry, in Curse of Strahd, um, the fifth edition import to Ravenloft,
Mm-hmm.
for those that don't know, the whole first level is really nothing just but mood building.
Yeah.
It's really really well done, and there doesn't need to be anything dramatic that happens because it's all just setting up kind of the dramatic things that do happen later. That's building a sense of dread. I think one of the
Yeah.
better things that happens is in the game, there's this situation where the characters are in kind of an adjacent room to what is used to be a nursery, and they hear crying and wailing from the adjacent room, knowing that there was like having some hints that some sort of horrible thing happened in this house a very long time ago. And the players go into the adjacent room, and when they go into the adjacent room, they see that it is a nursery and there's still a crib on the far end of the nursery. And they approach the crib, and in the crib is this bundle of like a small bundle wrapped up that looks like about the size of a child in the crib wrapped up. And when you unravel the binds, there's nothing in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's super duper effective. If you don't build the mood with like the
Yeah.
foreshadowing of the crying and the history of the family and everything, then you just have like, oh, you go over there and there's like a monster and the fucking like thing. It's like it's really cheap.
Yeah.
But because you don't do that and you don't do it, like players know something is gonna happen in the fucking game. Like there's gonna be some sort of drama, and the more you can kind of push it down the road, the more terrifying it's gonna be. You don't even need to have it be all that terrifying. You just need to have the players anticipate it. Have everything that the players want to know, like, be just barely out of view. And I mean that like literally and metaphorically. Like, if it's just barely out of view, this contributes to what you call creepiness, right?
Mhm.
Creepiness is something that is, you don't know how to read it, right? The best example I can think of is the twins in the far end of the hallway in The Shining.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like one of the creepiest fucking things ever. And part of the reason it's so creepy is the camera is far enough away that you can't really see the expression on the girls' faces. And they're ghosts or some version of something like ghosts, but they're also children. You can't see their faces, and they're kind of saying something that is somewhat encouraging to the protagonist, come and play with us, Danny. But because they're saying it in this really hollow way, it seems almost threatening. So you don't know whether to read it as a threat or not. And the things that you don't know whether to read as a threat or not are what we call creepy. And the more you can creep your fucking players out by making them uncertain as to whether something is a threat because it's half in the shadow and half out of the shadow in a analogy sort of way, and sometimes in a quite literal way, that contributes to the dread, and the dread is essential to it's the heartbeat of a horror game.
So in Foundry, I use Foundry VTT as my virtual tabletop of choice. There's a function that you can use in Foundry where you can drop a sound clip on something and then show, have it. This is how far it can go out, and as the players go into it, they move their tokens in there. It goes through their sound, and the closer they get to the source, the louder it gets. I actually had a baby cry set on the crib on the map in my Thursday group, and Calvin, the oldest guy there, but he's also, he's a dad, and I think he might be almost a grandfather now. But either way, yeah, we're all old. But as we got in there, Dan and Keith and a couple of the other guys were just like, oh, this is weird. This is weird. I don't know if I like this. And Calvin brings his token in. He's just like, nope, you got to turn that off now. I'm not going to deal with that. That is not cool. So yeah, that turned off real quick. But I wanted to say, so horror to me is more of a mixture of things than, because a lot of people think that horror and horrific things are just that, they're scary. They're scary things. No. There's a good mixture of different things. There's, I think it's a mixture of uneasiness, fear, or dread. I don't know if David would constitute those as different, and then a form of helplessness. And when you mix all those together, that is horror.
Yeah, I probably would. Also unease, not uneasiness.
Sorry, thank you.
I would probably delineate between fear and dread. Dread is the anticipation that something bad is going to happen. Fear is what is evoked in you when something bad does happen. So they're probably slightly different, but it's probably not super consequential. But yeah, there's a lot of things that contribute to um, that contribute to us being afraid of something. But generally speaking, if you're playing a more long form campaign,
Mhm.
then then the better route to go is subtlety, like a subtle creep that builds up, whether it's whatever genre it is. There's a reason that when most of us, I don't know, like I'm a horror movie aficionado, okay? Like I like horror movies quite a bit. Um, and those of us that like horror movies, as a general rule, find jump scares to be pretty cheap. Um, and jump scares are precisely cheap because they're playing on your more base instincts.
Mhm.
And so the more you're into kind of like a horror movie or the horror movie genre, the more you're likely to be into things that are not just like playing on your base fears. Like, oh, there's a maniac with a knife and he's going to kill you. Like, of course everyone's afraid of that. Like, but the things that can play on more kind of dull existential fears, things that are more obtuse or oblique or hidden from plain view. Occult, I guess, is the word for hidden from plain view. Occult, but not like necessarily in a supernatural way. The more you can kind of lean into those things and deciding kind of what your genre is, I would suspect the better off you're going to be. Um, because frankly, we've all become so desensitized to the kind of um, more obvious things. There's a big threat. There's a maniac with a chainsaw and he's chasing after you. Most of us don't find that scary anymore because it's just too obvious.
Yeah.
It's like it's a threat. And if you're within the context of a role-playing game in particular, first of all, that's another layer removed from reality. And secondly, presumably the characters that you're playing are in some way capable and more likely to deal with that. So you don't want to make the characters feel as though something is a problem that they should meet head on with their character's capabilities. You want them to feel helpless. Um, as Matt said, a sense of helplessness and a sense of like not knowing where the next threat is coming from or how to deal with it, but there being some sort of um, driving force for why you need to deal with it. The tension between those two things is what's going to create uh, the horror element that you're looking
Mhm.
for.
I wanted to bring up some of these comments that I was looking at. One of them is by a deleted user, so they might have been a dickhead. But this comment is kind of I want to think about this a little bit. So they're saying I like how the in the Alien RPG, the Free League one, it takes away character agency when they start to panic. Sometimes players need a mechanical representation of how their character is affected by the world, and this does it in a cool way. I do remember when the Free League Alien RPG came out that there was a mechanic in there. I only read over it, briefly, uh, but I know that yeah, you can lose. There's like ways, there's mechanics of how your character acts as soon as they become, as soon as they like go through these different horrific things.
Yeah,
But what
but
do you think of taking away player agency in a because of fear?
if I'm generally a fan of it because removing player agency is a way to instill helplessness in the players. They did this in the more recent edition. I don't know if it's the most recent or the previous edition of VTM, where it's like when you frenzy out,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like shit goes red,
Yeah.
and you just wake up the next day and you have like these horrific memories or
Mm-hmm.
horrific flashbacks or dreams about what it is that you had done. That's much cooler than saying you flip out and you kill five people or whatever. It's like because it's that old adage, right? Like you don't show Jaws in the first reel of the film,
Yep.
right? Like Jaws is an amazing case study in the building of tension and the building of dread. But if you watch the movie, the shark looks pretty underwhelming.
Yeah.
It looks pretty campy by today's standards, which I think this year is actually celebrating 50 years this year.
Yep. Hmm.
Um, but it's still a masterclass in building dread. There is a reason that that movie settled in the collective unconscious and made everybody afraid to go in the water. It is very well done. And as it turns out, you don't need to have the greatest creature effects or the greatest, um, special, like, animatronics or whatever, because the shark looks, frankly, kind of hokey by today's standards. But that almost like doesn't matter, right? Because the setup to it is so well done. And so I would say take a page out of Spielberg's handbook as far as that goes, and don't show Jaws in the first reel of the film, and your players, and especially because like you don't have to, you're not hamstrung by special effects or the whatever of your time. You can describe something in the most visceral and horrific way that you can. Put some thought into um, when you're gonna get there. Keep hinting at something, hinting at something, hinting at something, and then decide when I finally do describe this thing, how do I want to describe it? Maybe I want to go in graphic, minute detail of like how horrible this thing is. Or maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you
Hmm.
want to just leave it still vague and aloof and whatever. Um, they can have different effects, but if you're just allowing yourself enough runway to build that tension and that suspense, um, it's the heartbeat of a horror genre.
Hmm. I want to my final thoughts on it. One reason why Call of Cthulhu is kind of like the king of horror games in the tabletop
Mm.
uh, space is because the main feature of the game, other than the sanity mechanic, because as soon as you bring up sanity, everybody's just like, "Oh, that's a Call of Cthulhu classic," is it is there to make you and your character feel helpless. Every monster that you come across, every supernatural being that you come across, is certain death if you ever try to interact with it in a violent or hostile way. It's no, that thing will just kill you. um Same thing with other cultists and other, like, it's these strange things that is supposed to make you feel helpless. The
Mm-hmm.
mechanics are there to make you feel helpless. uh we've had plenty, when we played Call of Cthulhu, David and I played it with our buddies Matt Moore and Patrick. And Matt Moore was that guy. Wyatt, not so much. He kind of got into the horror part of it, but Matt, he is a fantasy RPG kind of dude. And he was like, I made his pre-gen character. Well, actually, Chaosium did. They came with these. David was the only one that didn't play a pre-gen. Uh,
Oh right, yeah, it was.
but
I was
Matt,
making my own guy.
yeah, I'm gonna make my own. You made a reporter. You made a journalist.
Yeah.
Where everybody else was a college student, you were infiltrating the college and trying to get this story. I thought it was very cool. But Matt found the one dude that was on the fencing team so that he could have a sword. And I was like,
Yeah.
sure, dude, whatever. And guess who was the first one to die? Matt Moore was the first one
Yes.
to die.
He was like, I fucked this guy up. I just did 4 points of damage. Like, and you're like, yeah, he's got 64
Yeah.
health.
These things have 150 hit points.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But yeah,
And
he was the first one to die. I think he was the second one to die as well.
D- yeah, you might be right. Like, yeah, he was
Because he played two characters, and after the
Yeah.
second one, he stopped playing with us.
Yes. That
But
I think that was the last time I saw him at Moore. Actually.
yeah, I think that was the last time I saw him as well. But
Yeah.
in doing that, yes, make the feeling of helplessness, uh, be it through mechanics, or maybe you can use your GM powers to kind of flub it. Hell, man, maybe the first time that your characters meet Strahd, that first encounter that you have, where I think David had it, where he showed up on his horse on the Nightmare in front of us when we were all like level 3, and he showed
Yeah.
up, and David made it very obvious that he would destroy us if we tried anything. That shit's scary. You don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, out of your depth.
Yep. But that's it for me. Do you have anything to end on there, David?
I got nothing else.
All right. I think that's going to bring us to the end of this one, so we'll just leave it with a good night.
And good luck.